Match 13, Anguirus vs. Showa vs. Kumasogami by Thomas Singleton. A jet of wind blew gently across the land. Trees stood perfectly still, their branches wavering in the wind's presence. In the distance, the sounds of water crashing against the shore echoed across the region. Bathing the land in all its glory was the glowing essence of a sphere in the sky above. Bright fabrics of light radiated off the shimmering surface of the neighboring star and revealed the land that time had forgotten. Decades ago, the dominant species of the planet, man, stored the mightiest creatures to ever scourge the planet on the island. In the distant shores, machines and other forms of technology had been deployed, always watching and making sure the giant monsters could never escape the boundaries that were made for them. In a certain sector of the island, dubbed Monster Island, the land rattled from the coming of a giant, trotting across the soil, staggering the land with his claws and walking on all fours, was a beast whose courage outlasted any other creatures on the planet. Sharp horns erected out of the top of the animal's back, gleaming in the sunlight as a testament of the natural beauty the animal shone. Eyes larger than the skull of a Tyrannosaurus rex scavenged the surrounding environment, searching for prey. Residing in the creature's mouth, which had a shape resembling that of a crocodile's, were jagged teeth. Long tusks bent out of the creature's mouth, an instinctual warning to nearby predators of the price to pay if they would ever pick a fight with the armored dinosaur. Pass.
Coming to a halt, Anguirus sensed a strange presence that he was not familiar with. The dinosaur's nostrils had already analyzed the sense of the other inhabitants of the island, aware of who was friend or foe. But this strange presence was neither thus far. Whatever it was, whoever it was intruding on his territory. Pushing his hands against the ground, now he has hands, okay. Anguirus poised his body towards the heavens and opened his mouth, releasing a thundering roar. Threatening the intruder with his roar, Anguirus wanted the intruder to know full well that it was going to reside in these parts or have to deal with the savage brutality of Anguirus. Silence greeted the armored dinosaur. Out of all the monsters on the island, Anguirus was the first to be easily challenged. Accepting his challenge with a responding cry that would antagonize the behemoth, but remaining silent was the best way to turn the animal's prehistoric mind into a state of anger beyond any comprehension. Anguirus opened his massive jaws one last time, issuing another roar that shook the ground. But soon the ground shook on its own accord, no longer influenced by the sounds that were escaping Anguirus' throat. The intruder was moving beneath the ground, creating seismic activity. Flames burst from the depths of the soil, reducing the surface to a state of chaos. Nearby forests had quickly fallen prey to the flames, and now spread faster than one could possibly imagine. Smoke churned from the cascades of fire, blocking out the sun in only a matter of minutes. Pass!
Anguirus stumbled back, taken off guard by these surprising turn of events. Wagging his tail across the ground, the horns that stretched out of the surface of the tail slicing the ground in the process. Anguirus snarled a distressed cry. The intruder was coming closer. From where the fiery streams of hell erupted forth from the ground, the body of a demon ascended to the surface in Anguirus' line of sight. In a humanoid-like shape. Shouldn't that just be humanoid shape? I mean, a human-like. The demon from the pits of hell glared down at the armored saurian. The demon's eyes were embedded with a bright ruby glow, looking like a window for any viewer to look through and see the hellish wasteland of the underworld itself. Its mandibles opened and closed randomly, exhaling steam that hissed upon contact with the surrounding air. Rivers of lava, flowing in veins beneath the demon's skin, gleamed through the armored hide. The demon took a step towards Anguirus, boiling the dirt beneath its feet soon after. Flexing its claws, the demon horrifically pointed its decrepit finger directly at Anguirus. Anguirus' eyes had fallen upon a demon from the underworld, known as Kumasogami. Pass.
Saliva dripped from the pores of Kumasogami's mouth, which fell to the ground and ate through the soil like acid. Bearing its white teeth that had strands of burnt flesh wrapped around it, Kumasogami screamed an agonizing cry at Anguirus. The scream penetrated Anguirus' ancient soul and caused the reptile to leap back. This immediate reaction surprised and appalled Anguirus, while this reaction amused the demon. Gathering courage, Anguirus' gaping jaws exhaled a violent bark, a challenge, one Kumasogami accepted willingly. Kumasogami allowed Anguirus to make the first move. The ground trembled as the powerful dinosaur charged the demon from the underworld. Leaping through the air that had been manipulated by the heat generated off the demon's body, Anguirus brought his Tuscan jaws down upon the demon's shoulders. Anguirus' teeth penetrated the demon's flesh. Instead of chasing the warm feeling of an animal's blood, the armored dinosaur screamed in surprise as lava gushed out of the wound the dinosaur's teeth inscribed. Even by touching the demon's skin burnt Anguirus' teeth and mouth. But despite the painful reckoning of closing his jaws at Kumasogami's shoulder and having lava pour out of the open wound, Anguirus' jaws stayed latched onto the demon. The cauldrons of smoke reduced the area to darkness, as the sun had already left this side of the world. Within a small time span of his arrival, Kumasogami had already turned this place into a duplication of his home. Amidst the burning forest, Kumasogami staggered back and forth, attempting to free his shoulder of Anguirus' vengeful teeth. Anguirus would not let go. Now the demon had grown tired of this dinosaur's insolence and held the creature at bay by placing his shoulders straight up, allowing Anguirus' underbelly to be exposed. Kumasogami held up his right hand, which began to transform into a scythe. The demon's fingers had been sucked into the hand, their claws used to form the sharp essence of the scythe blade. Using a combination of evolution and magic, the demon had forged the perfect impaling weapon. It was too late for Anguirus to counter. Pass.
Okay.
Kumasogami plowed.
I know. Thank you, Banner. I couldn't have figured that out on my own. Kumasogami plowed the blood into Anguirus' underbelly, easily piercing the dinosaur's flesh and allowing blood to spread out of the wound. The blood stained Kumasogami's scythe in the process. Despite being given a horrible wound and having intense pain vibrate the very core of his consciousness, Anguirus didn't release his hold. Kumasogami examined the blood that dripped from his scythe and feeling a thirst of dread. The demon licked the blood clean from the blade and turned towards the open wound. Licking the jagged teeth inside his mouth, the demon staggered his mouth forward and bit into the open wound. Even Kumasogami's vicious bite went unnoticed to Anguirus' psyche, for the armored saurian was too busy mourning over his previous painful experience. Warm blood flowed down the demon's throat, allowing the demon to inherit its quench of thirst. The courage that urged Anguirus to fight to the very end was usurped by the inner instincts of the ancient reptile. Anguirus released its gripping hold his jaws has had on Kumasogami's shoulder. Despite the demon possessing great physical strength, it failed to hold Anguirus in the air with just one hand. The armored behemoth fell to the ground, its underbelly slipping away into the raking fangs of the demon from hell. Anguirus landed on all fours, attempting to touch the drier soil with his underbelly, which still pumped out blood. Kumasogami looked down upon the back of the hundreds of sharp spikes sticking straight up. Kumasogami sliced his scythe through the air and struck the spiky back. Upon contact, spikes flew through the air in a staggering sound that would make even teeth shatter fill the area with its presence. A few Anguirus' spikes had been cut off, but the thick carapace beneath the spikes remained unscathed. Relentless, the demon adapted and decided to try and grab Anguirus' throat and lift him up to deliver the final blow. However, Anguirus leapt up into the air and twirled his body at a 180-degree angle. Anguirus' tail smacked Kumasogami in the face, and the unexpected blow led the demon to stumble back, tumbling to the ground. Reptilian eyes gazed upon the fallen demon path.
Anguirus would not allow his foe to rise and carry out a counterattack. In front of a region that had gone up in flames, the demon slowly began to rise to its feet. Anguirus turned its back towards the intruder from the underworld. Sharp spikes pointed directly at the rising demon, as Anguirus stood up in an erect posture. Standing on his hind legs, Anguirus summoned all his inner strength and jumped backwards. The fiery orbs that represented the demon's eyes had not expected this prehistoric foe to launch an assault like this. Hundreds of sharp, pointy spikes had been driven into Kumasogami's body. 30,000 tons of muscle and bone had given it everything to thrust the sharp spikes into the demon's body. Blood sprayed out of the penetrations that had been inflicted by Anguirus. Upon whatever the demon's blood made contact with, steam hissed and sizzled. Kumasogami reared its unholy head towards the dark skies above, releasing a horrible cry that sank fear up Anguirus' spine. Anguirus' body slid down the slopes of the demon's body, ripping the demon's hide in the process. Still screaming a devastating roar, Kumasogami was mildly distracted. Anguirus ran across the ground, already forgetting about the horrible wound imprinted on his underbelly. Anguirus came to a commanding halt and began to rake the ground with his paws. Seconds passed, and Anguirus had succeeded in submerging his entire body beneath the soil. The pain that had wrecked the demon ended, and Kumasogami scanned the area, intent on killing the creature from a prehistoric past. Not willing to wait for his foe, Kumasogami morphed his left hand into an organic bow. The demon shifted his attention to the scythe that had once been his right hand. It molded into 3 long fingers. At the tips of these fingers, sharp ends formed into what appeared to be the tips of arrows. Within the central region of these arrows, a crimson light gleamed in an awe-inspiring manner. Kumasogami walked across the ground, shaking it with his mass, and leaving smoldering footprints behind. The ground a few hundred yards in front of him shifted. Seismic activity influenced that specific region. Not willing to take any chances, Kumasogami brought his right hand together with his left. They clanged to one another as if magnetically pulled. Taking aim, Kumasogami launched 3 arrows that flew swiftly through the air. Upon contact with the ground that had moved, 3 great balls of fire burned the ground. Soil exploded straight up, instantly being incinerated by the fiery balls of fire. Pass.
Kumasogami's eyes watched with pleasure as he saw the flames rise higher and higher. The horrific scene reminded the demon of its home. Amidst the cherishing moment, Anguirus burst from the ground behind the demon and rammed his body into Kumasogami's back. Stumbling forward against his own will, Kumasogami plummeted into the ground face first. Turning away from the demon, Anguirus crawled back down the hole and made it in the ground. As he descended into the darkness beneath the surface, Kumasogami rolled across the ground and launched 3 arrows directly at the fleeing dinosaur. When they whizzed past the hole, avoiding contact with Anguirus a second after he had disappeared beneath the terrain, those arrows struck an area a few miles away, sending it up in smoke. Rising to its feet, Kumasogami angrily anticipated the demise of the reptile filth that had defied his wrath. Kumasogami prepared for the next guerrilla assault. The ground rumbled beneath the demon's feet, and spikes ruptured the ground. They sliced through Kumasogami's feet and forced the demon straight up. Blocking out the pain, Kumasogami leapt off the back of Anguirus, leaving pieces of his flesh behind. The demon's body glided through the air until it slammed into the ground. Kumasogami swiftly turned towards Anguirus, aiming his arrows directly at the reptilian fiend, and launched them. The arrows dug into the side of the aberration, exploding on contact soon after, scalding the dinosaur's flesh. Releasing a barrage of exploding arrows, Anguirus' entire body was engulfed in flames. Scalding flames burnt the flesh of Anguirus constantly. Kumasogami continued to release a salvo of exploding arrows, hoping to reduce the dinosaur's body to charcoal. But still, Anguirus fought the nerve-wracking pain. The mammoth dinosaur turned towards Kumasogami, flames flickering from every inch of his body. Screeching cries of agony bellowed from Anguirus' gaping jaws. Striding forward, Anguirus made it his goal to at least end his life by ripping his claws into the demon's hide once more. When Anguirus was only a few feet away, Kumasogami ceased firing his arrows and looked down upon the severely burnt creature before him. Burnt flesh hung from separate areas of the creature's body. And yet, Anguirus was still coming. Pass.
Kumasogami's hands morphed into regular hands. In the demon's mind, dismembering Anguirus with his bare hands would be better. Stepping towards Anguirus while bending down in the process, Kumasogami grasped Anguirus' skull and squeezed with all his might. Anguirus cackled a thrashing cry, pulling back and forth, trying to break the demon's hold. With the left hand still squeezing a chunk of Anguirus' head, Kumasogami took his right hand and formed a fist. Exerting all of his strength into that one fist, Kumasogami plowed it repeatedly into Anguirus' face. Minutes passed and the physical blows continued, until finally Kumasogami stopped and examined his foe. Anguirus was unconscious. Kumasogami had now had a chance to finish the saurian off, with a strange tingle into his demonic mind. Exactly what would bring about more agony to this abomination of the modern world? The idea had stricken Kumasogami successfully, and the demon picked Anguirus' still body up. Kumasogami walked over to the opening that had split the ground asunder, holding Anguirus over his head. And from the opening from which Kumasogami had come from, the demon could look down and conveniently see the flames that burned in the underworld. Hell would soon have a new arrival. Pass.
The demon prepared to launch Anguirus into hell, but the burnt monster opened his eyes and instinctively wrapped his tail around one of Kumasogami's legs. Pulling with all of the available might, Anguirus caused the demon to fall forward on top of a ledge that was the only thing keeping both of them from falling into the fiery sepulchre below. Anguirus crawled over Kumasogami's back and walked forward, in the opposite direction of where the demon had tried to throw him. Anguirus stood up on his hind legs. Kumasogami slowly rose to his feet. The livid eyes of the demon described the emotions the demon was feeling: humiliation, anger, and disclosure. But as Kumasogami turned around, Anguirus leapt back and nailed the demon in the back with its own. The collision was enough to send Kumasogami falling forward into the hole in the ground. The demon screamed as it fell closer and closer to its origination, disappearing in the flames that burned miles below. Anguirus gazed down upon the hellish flames from a world dedicated to carnage and misery. Raising his head to the heavens that had been shrouded by the dark clouds above, Anguirus howled a victorious cry that all of the monsters on Monster Island could hear. His skin severely burnt and courageous attitude stretched beyond its limits. Anguirus walked away from where Kumasogami had fallen. The hole that leads to hell closed. Entire forests that were once bathed by the beauty of the sun were being reduced to charcoal by the flames wrought by Kumasogami. Anguirus slowly exited the region of the island that he had called home, intent on searching for a new habitat. Wherever it may be, Anguirus was determined to fight for it. As the armored behemoth walked away from a victorious battle that nearly cost him his life, helicopters soared over the sky, dropping yellow powders that quelled the flames. The humans had watched the entire battle and were shocked to learn that not only are there giant creatures in the world, but also supernatural entities from worlds unseen by the human eye. Perhaps it's a good thing to have these forces of nature on the planet, to fend off these demonic beasts who threaten all life from extinction. Winner, Anguirus. Showa.
And quickly, on behalf of GrayShot151, he really liked this match. This is probably one of his favorites, but he could not be here due to reasons. But with that said, this is actually a really good match, and I did enjoy it a lot. So glad to reread it again for me personally, and I'd say it's still just as gripping as it was when I first read it. So
I agree. It was a gripping match.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best so far.
Yeah, and this was way before Anguirus was enabled to Thunderball, so you know, yeah.
This was before Final Wars, wasn't
it? Maybe, but
maybe, yeah. If not a little bit.
Right.
Because, like, oh, actually, no, it must have been after Final Wars. Yeah, that makes sense, because Gigan versus Kiryu was match 9, anyway, so.
Right. But, yeah, freaking...
Boop.
Yeah, this one's pretty gripping.
Indeed.
Harley?
I think it's called...
Oh, what the...
It's called dropped. I don't know how.
Oh, gosh, didn't even know it disappeared. Well, I don't know exactly what to say on Harley's behalf, but... Oh, wait. They're coming back in.
I'm trying to add him back. Come on. Come on, dude.
Come on, bro.
Come on. Come on, guy. Darn. I don't know what's wrong. Do you think we should just do the outro?
Yeah, probably. So, anyway. So that was Anguirus versus Kumasogami, and we will see you guys in match 14.
So long.